Sayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Privajagacharya Shotara Sata Shishimad. His divine grace, the Vaicharana Vinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. Kadrashri Bhagavatam ki. Nita Gaur Premanande. All glories to some of the devotees. All glories to some of the devotees. All glories to some of the devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru Sri Brahma. All glories to Sri Prabhupada. Om Ajnanatamaraندasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Tam Vandeyam Shri Guru Shri Uttaparakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishubhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namaste Girirajaya Shri Govardhana Namane Ashesha Klesha Nashaya Paramananda Daine Vancha Kalpatarabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Mare Kabando Matsangin Madguru Manmadana Madnistaraka Madbhagya Madananda Namostite Asaru Saru Tadayin Natini Chochatakara Hanamuncha Karachinmam Premna Hritkatayospara Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskata Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devyam Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Madhiraya Nastapreshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttamam Shloke Bhaktir Bhakti Naishtaki. Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome, Alan. Today we'll be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Creation of the Fourth Order, chapter number 28, Paranjana becomes a woman in his next life, text number 23. Pashuvadhyavaniresha Niyamana Swakam Chayam Anvadravan Anupata Shochanto Bhishamatura Pashuvadhyana Viresha Niyamana Swakam Chayam Anvandravan Anupata Shochanto Bhishamatura Pashuvadhyavaniresha Niyamana Swakam Chayam Anvadravananupata Sochanto Bhishamatura Pashuvadhyavaniresha Niyamana Swakam Chayam Anvadravananupata Shochanto Bhishamatura Pashuvadhyavaniresha Niyamana Swakam Chayam Anvadravananupata Sochanto Bhishamatura. Okay, word for word. Pashuvat, like an animal. Yavanai, by the Yavanas. Eshaha, Paranjana. Niyamanaha, being arrested and taken away. Shwakam, to their own. Kshayam, abode. Anvadravan, followed. Anupataha, his attendants. Sochantaha, lamenting. Brisham, greatly. Ataraha, being distressed. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace. Abhay Charanavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. When the Yavanas were taking King Paranjana away to their palace, binding him like an animal, the king's followers became greatly aggrieved. While they lamented, they were forced to go along with him. Please repeat. When the Yavanas were taking King Paranjana away to their palace, binding him like an animal, the king's followers became greatly aggrieved. While they lamented, they were forced to go along with him. Purport. When Yamaraj and his assistants take a living entity away to the palace of judgment, the life, air, and desires, being followers of the living entity, also go with him. This is confirmed in the Vedas. When the living entity is taken away or arrested by Yamaraj, tam uptramanantam, the life air goes with him, prano nukramati. And when the life air is gone, pranam anukratmantam, all the senses, sarve pranaha, also go along, anutkramanti. When the living entity and the life air are gone, the lump of matter produced of the five elements, earth, water, air, fire, and ether, is rejected and left behind. The living entity then goes to the court of judgment, and Yamaraj decides what kind of body he is going to get next. This process is unknown to modern scientists. Every living entity is responsible for his activities in this life, and after death he is taken to the court of Yamaraj, where it is decided what kind of body he will take next. Although the gross material body is left, the living entity and his desires, as well as the resultant reactions of his past activities, go on. It is Yamaraj who decides what kind of body one gets in accordance with one's past actions. Srila Prabhupada Ki. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharade Nirvishesha Shanyavadi Pastatari Shatarade Namaste Jivanandaya Dasaya Vanacharine Prabhupada Balabhaya Skanasi Lavanurine Agyana Dvaita Gamanam Pashtata Patitatmanam Jnana Gurte Chitarine Chakshashe Namaha. So here we're hearing once again, continuously, when we study Bhagavatam every day, we really get familiar with these concepts. Like, we all should know how to rule a kingdom after hearing about King Prithu for 2 years. And now we're learning how not to die. So King Paranjana is leaving his body. And of course, this story is an allegory that is given by Narada Muni to King Prachini Barashtat. And so we're hearing the allegorical attack of the Yavanas are attacking the city of King Paranjana and binding him. So Paranjana is the living entity, and the city is the city of 9 gates. This is the body. So Paranjana is he who's living within the body, and he's being attacked by the Yavanas, which are death, the representatives of time. They're taking away this body, forcing him to leave this city, taking over his city. So there's a misconception that many people have in the New Age world. As you go out there and you preach, people think, I chose to take birth. You hear this a lot. I chose to come here because I'm a starseed from the Pleiades, or I'm an Andromedan starseed, and I'm chilling with the Acharyas. That may be true to some degree. I'm not sure not to deny some people's experiences or whatnot. But one thing we know for sure is that we don't choose to take birth. Prakriti kriyamanani guna karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimudatma kartahamiti manyate. Krishna explains in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, 27th verse, that the living entities in this material world, bewildered by false ego, think themselves the doer of activities that are in actuality performed by the 3 modes of material nature. So it's the nature of the living entity to think that I am the doer, but actually the modes are at work. Just like when I was feeding the birds yesterday, I was noticing Sufi coming up and attacking me. I'm just pushing him away, but he's so puffed up, he's so caught up in his own false ego that when I leave, he thinks, yes, I've ran him off. And so in that way, he's thinking I was the doer. But actually, he wasn't the doer. I just left of my own accord because I was finishing my business there. But he's thinking, I just punked that Kirtaneshwar Gauranga Das.
You sure he did?
This is the way the living entity is thinking. In the same way, someone is thinking, yes, I became president. I've become the Lord and Master of all that I survey. But actually, this has nothing to do with you. This has everything to do with the modes of material nature, which are based on your karma. In the 13th chapter, 22nd verse, 21st to 22nd verse. Apurusha prakriti stohi bhangte prakriti jangunan karanam gunasangosyat sadasyad yoni janmashu. Krishna is explaining that the living entities situated within this material world go about their business enjoying and suffering that which is born of the modes of material nature. Due to contact with those material modes, the living entity is forced to take birth in good and evil circumstances. Sat asad yoni janmashu. He's taking birth in both good and evil circumstances. This is because he is associating with the modes of material nature. So one may think that I'm very powerful, but had he taken birth in another location, under different circumstances, with different parents, then that circumstance could be changed. So much is not in our control. But the living entity, bewildered by his thinking I'm this body, he's thinking, yes, I've chosen to take birth here. I've chosen to experience this. And this is a misconception because we're forced by karma. The people who are having bad karma happen to them, many times they don't think that. They understand this is forced. But even some who do, they've experienced bad things. I chose to experience these bad things. Well, we did because we left Krishna. In that sense, we did. I was hearing Srila Prabhupada speak this morning, and Srila Prabhupada said that everybody is fighting to survive. Everything is fighting to survive, all the animals and the birds and the fish, and we see that they're all fighting to survive. Everybody's trying to find a way to survive. And this is the propensity of the living entity because the living entity is eternal. This is why everybody is so obsessed with survival. And we see that in the movies and the TV shows that are coming out now that every single plot is basically death hanging over you. And that's how everything works. Death is hanging over the people. Oh, they're going to die. And so out of fear, the entire plot unravels. But for a devotee who's fearless, then all those plots have no value because we're not scared of death. We'll do our best to survive, but we're not going to, act like fools. I have to think of that show. It's popular when I was, I think about 6th grade, The Walking Dead. And it was just totally weird because all these people were just acting like idiots because they were scared to die. The whole thing's just fear-based. And so when that fear is gone, that changes our entire outlook. And so how do we become free from fear? Ayorati vaipumsam udyam astam chayanasa tasyate yachino nita utamashloka vartaya. Both in the rising and the setting, the sun diminishes the lifespan of everybody, except for those who spend their days hearing and chanting the glorious pastimes of Uttamashloka, Krishna. So those who spend their days absorbed in Krishna Katha, they don't have to experience death. They don't have to experience fear. Bhajahure mana Sri Nanda Nandana abhaya charanara vindare. Durlabha manava janatma satsange taraue bhava sindure. O mind, just worship the lotus feet of the son of Nanda, which make one fearless. Having obtained this rare human birth, cross over the ocean of material existence by associating with saintly people. This is a great instruction here that when one attaches their mind to Krishna, when the mind becomes attached to Krishna, then one becomes fearless. And what is that fearlessness? One develops from that attachment to Krishna, from that bhakti yoga, one develops causeless knowledge and detachment. By becoming attached to Krishna, one develops natural detachment. Prabhupada said so many times that one can measure their Krishna consciousness by renunciation. As they begin to become more and more detached from sense gratification, from materialistic activities, one can understand that they're advancing in Krishna consciousness. In a similar way, as one notices they're becoming more and more attracted to sense activities and activities that are fruitive in nature, not activities that are based in pure devotional service, one becomes more degraded. One can understand they're lacking development in spiritual consciousness. And so what are those activities that the living entity is attached to? Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, etc. That's what constitutes pure devotional services as described by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. One who's attached to hearing and chanting about Krishna. And that is basically their business. Such a person is very elevated in devotional service, just like Srila Prabhupada. His business was to hear and chant about Krishna and to spread that hearing and chanting. So even though someone may have some materialistic duty, they may have jobs and so many different materialistic duties based on their material circumstances, maintaining family and so forth. Still, in any case, one should become attached to this process of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. And after one is attached to that process, after one is engaging in that process of Krishna consciousness, then one should not further entangle themselves with more materialistic activities. So every time we act on a material desire, and that includes the secondary aspects of devotional service, all the different varnashram statuses, then we're going to be entangling ourselves. So therefore, our real business is to ayorharati vaipumsam udyam astam chiyanasau tasyarte yachino nita uttama shloka vartaya. Become attached to hearing and chanting, hearing the glories of the Lord. So in that way, we're not going to be fearless. We're going to be fearless. We will not be so confused, so desirous to survive. The hard struggle for material existence is that we don't want to die. But when we realize we're not this body, that we're not going to die, that changes everything. Now I'm not going to die. And therefore, whatever you put me through, whatever you do to me, it's only temporary, and I know that. And so you become very much from manipulation. People can't manipulate a devotee the same way they can manipulate a materialist, because a materialist has so much to lose. The devotee has nothing to lose. He has Krishna. And the devotee, he's not easily pulled by sense gratification, enticed by the material world. That's how, in this current manifestation of the material world, Maya is working. She's sending so many commercials and billboards and magazines and, people around that are trying to tell you, this is nice. This is what you want. Sometimes you should think, I think like this sometimes when I see a circumstance, you see something materialistic and you think that's nice. These are commercials from Maya. Maya is sending her commercials out, You see some nice, boy and girl and they're looking like they're enjoying so much, young, and you think that's a commercial from Maya right there, actually. Because there's always a behind the scenes. And then you get on your Facebook and you see, they're posting the pictures of their perfect life, but actually behind the scenes, it's all very, very miserable. So we don't want to be falling for these commercials. Maya is always sending us her advertising, I don't mean that just in terms of actual advertising, anything that is looking very enjoyable, but we understand that it's not enjoyable. That's Maya's advertising. Vritartam yat pratiyeta na pratiyeta chatmani tad vidyodatmano maya yata baso yata tamaha. Lord Krishna has explained to Brahma in the second canto that whatever seems to be of value in this world, if it has no connection with me, know it to be completely useless, an illusion of the darkness reflected in my energy, reflected in the material energy. So, Vritartam yat pratiyeta, it may appear to be of value, but it's have no value because it's not connected with Krishna. It's not connected with our service, our actual identity. It's based in the false ego. And the false ego, we're thinking we're doing so many things, but we're just playing out the movie, the play. That the false ego is thinking, I am the husband of this wife, I am the wife of this husband, I am the father of this child, I am the child of this family. And so in this way, the false ego is thinking, I am this. But this has nothing to do with our actual identity, our actual position as eternal servants of Krishna. Therefore, all of these false identities, upadhis, should be shed off by the process of strong and powerful devotional service. And you can shed these off. Evam prasana manaso bhagavad bhakti yogataha bhagavat tattva vijnana mukta sangasya jayate. Sutta Goswami explains that in contact with this pure devotional service, the manaso prasanatma, the mind becomes prasan, the mind becomes joyful. Prasana manaso bhagavad bhakti yogataha, by engaging in strong bhagavad bhakti. Bhagavat tattva vijnana, one develops scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead. Mukta sangasya, in a stage of complete liberation from the material energy. So one completely ceases their association with material energy by this Bhagavad Bhakti Yoga, this associating with Krishna in the form of Bhakti Yoga. So we don't have to identify with the gross and subtle body and to fall for Maya's tricks. And in that way, as we fall for Maya's tricks due to attachment, the desire to survive begins. This desire to survive, because attachment begins with the body. I'm attached to my body. I'm attached to my own enjoyment. And because the body is the facility for my happiness, therefore I'm very attached to it. This is the way the materialistically conditioned soul thinks, that I'm attached to my body because I have to enjoy through senses. I have senses and I need to enjoy through my senses. And if I lose my body, I lose my senses, and therefore I lose my enjoyment. And that's the beginning phase. But then Maya goes deeper, but she seems like she's getting lighter. That's Maya's trick. That now I'm attached to another person for my enjoyment, both gross and subtle. And because I'm attached to this person, now I don't want that person to leave, and I have to maintain all the circumstances around that person so that they don't leave to continue my materialistic enjoyment. And then the children come, and the house, and the car, and everything else comes. And in that way, now I have so many objects of enjoyment that I have to maintain. And now we're seeing how Paranjana, he's very, very sad and depressed because he's having to leave the association of his wife, his children, and he's thinking, how will they go on without me? Actually, Krishna is maintaining, not you. This is their illusion that I'm thinking I'm God, I'm maintainer, I'm protector, I'm giving pleasure. This is the whole materialistic illusion propagated. But when one is enlightened by contact with pure devotional service and in contact with devotees who are in factual detachment, then one can begin to see the tricks of Maya and not fall for them. So as devotees, we should understand that we are blessed, we are safe, and we are going to go back to Godhead, but we shouldn't be careless. Just like the Yadava dynasty, Krishna annihilated them all because they were careless, actually. Some of them, they were very careless. They were thinking, we're Krishna's children. We're Krishna's family. We don't have anything to worry about. So let us become lax. And we see that Krishna was always protecting them, even though they were doing things we would not necessarily, do. Like, Aniruddha, right? He was captured by the witch, and he was brought to the house of what's the girl's name? Bana's daughter. Oh, I forgot the lady's name. No, it's something with an sound. Yeah, not Bali, Bana's daughter. Yeah, Banasura's daughter. Forgot her name. I used to remember it. Banasura's daughter. She was thinking. She had a dream, and in that dream, she saw a very beautiful boy, and she became very bashful in her sleep. Usha. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So Usha was dreaming, and then she dreamed about a very beautiful boy. She thought, yes, this is my husband. And so she was in her dream. She was kind of speaking in her sleep to this boy. She became very. She was saying things, and so then her other girlfriends had saw this, and then she woke up. She was very embarrassed and bashful. So there was one witch-like character who had mystic powers, and so she said, I can find who this boy is that you're dreaming of. And so she was going through different people, and she saw the Yadava dynasty, different Yadus, and said, these are close, and she saw Krishna and said, this is really close. And then she saw Aniruddha and said, this is him. This is the boy. So this lady took her flying saucer, and really, she had a spaceship of some sort, and she flew to Dwarka, and she beamed Aniruddha onto the ship. I mean, it's not really described. Somehow she got Aniruddha onto the ship. I'm assuming there was some type of beam involved. She beamed Aniruddha onto the ship there, and then she took him back, and then he was in this tower because Usha was locked away. Bana had locked her away in a tower to keep her safe from the boys. But she was up there in the tower, and now Aniruddha was there, and so then, next thing you know, she's pregnant, and all of a sudden the girls start to notice that there's symptoms of pregnancy there, and so then Bana is very angry, and so this is kind of like, from our perspective, these are associates of Krishna, so we can't we're not comparing ourselves to them, but we can say that this is illicit sex, this is not. And this is the personality of, this is Aniruddha, who's an expansion of Krishna. But there's a message here that actually Aniruddha, right? Krishna came and protected him, right? So then the whole Yadava army comes in and to save Aniruddha. But Krishna is protecting him, even though Aniruddha had perhaps done something that was not necessarily appropriate, although he's Aniruddha, so he can do it. But he was kidnapped, but he could have still left. He's Aniruddha, he could have left. So then he came, Krishna's entire dynasty came, right? And then there was a big fight, and Banasura came, and he was, of course, protected by Lord Shiva. And Banasura was a very, very great devotee of Lord Shiva. And he loved to fight, and so he would actually tear apart mountains with his thousands of arms. And he told Lord Shiva, he said, no one can fight me. And Lord Shiva thought, you're very puffed up, and so soon someone will appear who will defeat you. And then Krishna appeared, and then Krishna and Lord Shiva engaged in battle, the Vishnu Dwar and the Shiva Dwar and the sleeping weapon, and so many epic things happened in that battle. But eventually Banasura was cut down to only 4 arms, which is Krishna's great mercy, that actually I'll leave you still 4 arms. And because Banasura was a devotee of Lord Shiva, Krishna spared him. Well, there's many reasons too, actually, because actually Krishna had made a vow not to kill the inhabitants of Prahlad Maharaj. And so Bana is the son of Bali Maharaj. Bali Maharaj is the grandson of Prahlad Maharaj. So Krishna didn't kill Bana. So, but we see that the Yadu dynasty, right, they were protected. And Krishna protected them even though they were kind of acting in a way that was not necessarily appropriate. But you can't take that too far. That's why I'm saying is that although we're devotees, we can't become careless that, I can, have some sense gratification on the side and Krishna will protect me. This is actually an offense to the holy name, to engage in sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name. And I'm going to mess around a little bit and play with Maya a little bit. I'm still chanting. Why didn't he? Because the Yadavas were careless. Why didn't he? Because the Yadavas were careless about their devotional service. And they were actually becoming a burden on the planet. Although Krishna wiped out Jarasandha and wiped out all the Kurus and all the evil and inauspicious kings, Krishna realized that the Yadavas themselves were a burden on the planet. And so then, by arrangement, divine arrangement, the Yadavas, they went and they took that piece of steel, and Ugra Singh said, all right, we're going to turn it into powder. And the last little piece, we'll throw it in the ocean, and we'll throw the powder in the ocean. And so they did that, and then a fish ate that little piece, and the powder went. And then they went to Prabhas to perform austerities to purify themselves. So when they went to Prabhas, it just so happened that that powder floated to Prabhas into the canes, and then it grew these iron plants. And then the Yadavas proceeded to become intoxicated. And so they got drunk, and then they began to fight with one another. So they pulled out these iron plants, and they killed each other. The entire dynasty, that's Krishna and Balaram and Uddhava and Vrajnabha, wiped each other out. And then the last piece of iron was caught by a fisherman, and he cut the belly of the fish open. He found the piece of iron. He sold it to a hunter, and that hunter actually shot Krishna in the foot with an arrow. And Krishna pretended to leave his body. Krishna doesn't leave his body because he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the example here, what we should learn here is that the Yadavas, they became careless. And also we hear about Narakasura. Narakasura is another name in the Krishna book. He has two names. Narakasura. Narakasura was the son of Earth and Krishna. When Vrahadev lifted the earth from the ocean of Garbha, then when Vrahadev touched Mother Earth, she became pregnant. And so she had a son named Narakasura. Bhaumasura is his other name. In the Krishna book, they call him Bhaumasura. In the Bhagavatam, he's called Narakasura and Bhaumasura. So Narakasura was born. Narakasura is the child of Krishna. But what was Narakasura's fate? Right? He was killed. He was killed by Krishna himself. So even though Narakasura is the son of Krishna, he was killed by Krishna. Why? Because he was offensive to the Vaishnavas. And he wasn't following the regulative principles. He was acting foolishly. So Krishna will always protect those who are situated in very pure devotional service. So even though we're devotees and we think, yes, we're getting all the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we have faith we're going to go back to Godhead, we shouldn't play around. We shouldn't mess around. Stop screwing around. Shouldn't do that. So, because Yamaraj is real. Yamaraj is real, And although devotees, we think, yeah, we'll never see Yamaraj. We got Kunti Mala on. Still, we don't want to mess around because we hear about the disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, right? He left, and he went from being a very nice devotee of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta to being a very degraded person. And then when he died, they took his body and they put it on the funeral pyre, and then he was having this vision that he was in this court. He was dragged by Yamaraj to the court of death, the court of Yamaraj, by the Yamadutas, and Yamaraj was terrifying, going to punish him, and then Srila Bhaktisiddhanta walked into the courtroom, and it's like your lawyer. Your guru is your spiritual lawyer. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta walked into the courtroom and said, fool, you had every opportunity to become Krishna conscious, but you wasted this life. Therefore, wake up and go take shelter of so-and-so devotee. And so then on the funeral pyre, he wakes up. He says, I'm alive, don't burn me. And he went and took shelter of a Shiksha guru and became a very serious devotee again. So although we think, yes, I'm good, I'm a devotee, I'm a Vaishnava, we shouldn't mess around, we should be very serious. And then Srila Prabhupada says that every living entity is responsible for his activities. Right? So it means we should take radical responsibility. I've heard this before, that Krishna consciousness means radical responsibility. And don't blame others, and don't blame circumstances, don't blame life. Take full responsibility, because when you take full responsibility, then you become fully able to extricate yourself. You can actually start doing things in your life. So we should take responsibility. And Prabhupada also brings out this point in the purport that the subtle body is what is carrying us. So we should understand also that the subtle body is more important than the gross body in terms of our traveling from species to species, from life to life. And I can prove that because it's more about mentality than action. We see that even a pure devotee, if he's apichet sudaracha, or even if he's sudaracha, even if he's so sinful, he's committing abominable activities, if he has bhajate manyabhak, his mentality is fixed on Krishna, then that mentality will carry him to his next destination, not just his gross actions. Of course, we don't want to take that the wrong way. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains what that verse means. And Prabhupada says, a mistake is one thing, but if you're continually repeating these abominable activities, that doesn't count. And one of the things that are listed in the purport of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur on that verse is that the pure devotee may have to act abominably, but he completely accepts all reactions which come upon him without complaint. That I deserve whatever I deserve. In fact, I deserve worse. And he's very much remorseful of such abominable activities. And it's described that because of that fire of remorse, that itself is such a sinful reaction, the remorse that the pure devotee feels, that burns up the entire reaction of that work. And so the example given, I could say, is Vritrasura. Although Vritrasura was a demon with a very abominable body, he was internally a pure devotee. He was Chitraketu Maharaj in his past life. And so then he's acting in an apparently sinful way to kill the demigods, to attack the demigods who are these suras, those who are trying to maintain the universe and do devotional service, although in a materialistic way. Still, it's offensive. And so although Vritrasura is engaging in such an activity, his mentality was that of a pure devotee, right? As he's being killed by Lord Indra, as he's fighting Lord Indra, he's offering the most beautiful prayers to Krishna. In his heart, he's thinking, my Lord, when, oh when, will I be able to become the servant of your servants once again, so that by the dust of their lotus feet, I will always have your association. So although he's acting in this sinful way, he's very heartfelt wishing that he was just a pure servant of the servants of the Lord. So his subtle body was very beautiful. And after he was killed, he was immediately taken back to Godhead. We also see that in the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna is having to engage in what he deems are sinful activities. Right? Arjuna is speaking that there's so many reasons I shouldn't fight. It would be better to die than to live at the cost of the lives of those who are our teachers and our respectable elders. There's so many sinful reactions. It's sinful to kill your elders, to kill Bhishma and Drona. And not only that, it's going to cause unwanted population. The men will be killed and the women will be unprotected. And so Arjuna gives these reasons, yet Krishna says, no, you should still kill. He says, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara mugyacha mayaprita manobudhir mam eva shashisham shayaha. Krishna explains that one should perform the prescribed duty of fighting, while at the same time remembering me in the form of Krishna. With your mind and intelligence fixed on me, surely you will attain me without fail. So the prescribed duty may be sinful. It may have some fault. Of course, Krishna says that every action is covered by some fault, just as fire is covered by smoke. So really, devotional service is more in the mentality we're cultivating. And that's creating our subtle body. Right? We may find ourselves in horrible circumstances, just like we hear about in the first canto, how there were prostitutes in Dwarka. It's kind of one of the bewildering things. But no, they were pure devotees. But so it is the internal mentality of a person. Therefore, we should respect everybody. New devotee. It's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in the Madhurya Kadambini. He really explains how if you see a devotee and you think that they're less than me because they're not doing sadhana the same way I am, and we start thinking I can be offensive to them because they're offensive to others. Even if they're an offensive devotee, if we think, well, they're offensive, so I can blaspheme them, then you're in big trouble. Basically, that's what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says. You're in big trouble if you think that. And in fact, you take all the reactions they get. for their sinful activities. So we can't, because what if, and this is actually from the Desert Fathers, the Christians, one of the ancient Christian fathers. They were one monk was very critical of another monk. He was thinking, yes, this monk, he's not coming to the programs, and he's somebody, he was being very blasphemous. And, he was very close with God also. So, he had one day where, they switched roles. The Lord arranged it that he woke up and he was in the bad monk's body, and he couldn't do anything. He couldn't even move. And he saw that monk, when that monk went into his body, that he was doing more than he ever did. He was doing more than he could ever do in his body. So he was seeing that actually, although this monk is apparently not doing well, he's trying so much harder than I ever tried. So the subtle body is what's important. Therefore, it behooves us to become very, very humble and to respect everybody who's chanting Hare Krishna, according to the instructions given by Srila Rupa Goswami, right? Those who are juniors, we should give them mercy. Those who are equals, we should befriend them. Those who are seniors, we should serve them. In that way, we avoid envy. So this philosophy is very wonderful. It's easy to learn shlokas. It's a different thing to live shlokas. It's one thing to learn all the shlokas. It's a different thing to live all the shlokas. So we have to apply the philosophy. And that means test after test after test after test. That how am I going to apply the philosophy today? We see that sometimes, it's very easy to look very Krishna conscious, but then whenever there's a slight offense, one becomes very, very angry. Driving is a great example. You can just see someone's Krishna consciousness by the way they act when they're driving. Like by Sheshika Prabhu, if someone cuts him off, he goes, "I forgive you, Hare Krishna." So this is an advanced consciousness, but then sometimes, because their tolerance isn't there. It's all a show. And we don't want our Krishna consciousness to be false ego. It's actually got to be genuine. Or if we're internally, we're all hateful and angry and, all these things. And then externally we're, die hard bull. And still, at least we should be conscious of it and then work on it. It's not that it's like, condemn yourself, but we need to change our subtle mind, subtle body. Radhapran Prabhu, he said once, he was giving class down there, and he said, if someone could take a picture of your subtle body, what would it look like, And would you want people to see it? Would you want people to see a picture of that? So I spoke a little, I got on a tangent with the Banasura thing, so now it's 8:47. And I'll just end with this. I was going to read from the third canto a little bit about the court and how the Yamadutas take you. And I think those verses are a little too heavy for the day. So I'll just say this, and then we'll have some discussion. Hare Krishna says, he says, "Manmana bhavabad bhakto mad yaji maskuru mameva shashi satyamte pratijani priyosi me." That always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, offer your obeisance to me. So this is the real qualification of a devotee. That he is maintaining this internal consciousness of thinking of Krishna, loving Krishna, and having a relationship with Krishna. And in that way, sarva dharman prityaja mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo moksha shamimasucha. Is abandon everything else and surrender unto me, and I will deliver you from sinful reactions. Do not fear. So what does that mean? It means that we may find ourselves in bad circumstances. In fact, we most definitely will find ourselves in challenging circumstances. We most definitely will. How did we act in those circumstances? That's the real test. Did we maintain our sadhana? Did we maintain the behavior of a devotee? Did we continuously act in a way that's pleasing to Krishna? Are we actually shaping that subtle body, or did we just totally go into Maya and act a fool? Did we blaspheme? That devotee did this, and therefore I can blaspheme him. And this is, showing our lack of actual Krishna consciousness. And I'm speaking to myself too. It's not that we're all We're all like that. We all have that propensity. But if we can maintain real Krishna consciousness by always thinking of Krishna, and in that state of surrender, one doesn't have to be on the performance-based platforms like we were speaking about last night. One doesn't have to think, I'm not doing A, B, and C, and D, and therefore I'm not good enough. No, one is really receiving the grace of Krishna. And Krishna, I'm yours, and I'm just going to continuously do my best to serve you and to maintain my sadhana and maintain my my service. So we'll ask for questions or comments, realizations. Sorry, Shraddha.
Did you talk about the Prabhupada also, in the first part, Prabhupada was talking about we have to face Yamaraj, but he's also said and wrote that Yamaraj is for non-devotees.
I talked about that pretty extensively.
Okay. What did you say?
It was like half the class.
Oh, okay.
So, I said, basically that, we should be careful. And I gave the example that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's disciple did see Yamaraj. And there's this whole story in Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhav. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's disciple did see Yamaraj. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta came and saved him. But, we don't take that for granted.
Yeah.
We don't say, oh, I wear Kunti Mala, I'm not going to see Yamaraj. Then that could be, I can do whatever I want. That can be taken as using the holy name in an offensive way, or chanting Hare Krishna, committing sinful activities on the strength of the holy name.
Mm-hmm.
We can't, that's a cheating mentality, and we'll be cheated by Krishna if we do that.
Yeah, because people with Kunti Mala and Tilak have done some pretty abominable stuff.
Yeah.
So we can't think,
I also gave the example of the Yadu dynasty, that they were very, very, they became very puffed up in cases because they were so close to Krishna, and therefore Krishna annihilated them.
Yeah.
And also Narakasura, Bhamasura, he was the son of Krishna. He was the son of Rahadev in the earth, and he was killed by Krishna because even though he was the son of Krishna, he'd become sinful. And so he was a devotee at first. So we can't, use that. And I didn't say this, but in opposition to that, Jamil, he just called out his son's name, Narayan, and so that was not offensive. That was Namabas. And so because of that Namabas chanting, he just called out.
Yeah.
It wasn't I'm gonna cheat Krishna.
Yeah.
It was I'm just calling out, and therefore because he called out in the Namabas stage, all of his sinful actions were destroyed, and he got the opportunity to perform actual devotional service.
Right.
Any other points?
When we're doing devotional service, and there's so many, different services within that, obviously that's, as you're saying, helping our subtle body. But in the end, it's not really what service, devotional service we're doing, because it's the spirit of actually doing the service, which is more in the end, right?
It's more about who you are than what you're doing.
Yeah.
The ultimate service, Prabhupada said the best service is chanting Hare Krishna.
Right.
Because it's really about the love you have for Krishna. It's that mentality. Although the service itself is purifying, it is purifying. It's giving you Agyata Sukriti. You're becoming purified by that service. But the real thing is the mentality behind it. If someone's a pure devotee, then any service they do is done with full love and full devotion. It's fully spiritual. But if someone is not at the pure level, then it's still purifying. That's why, devotional service begins with Agyata Sukriti. It begins when someone just appreciates a devotee. I'm going to give some, $10 for a book, or, I'm appreciating the kirtan. It's not that they're all pure devotees, but they've done something so they become purified. It will help them in their future. Gaur Govinda Swami describes that, unless one is free from the desire for sense gratification, it can't be considered a pure devotee. But so how is it that why is it, why are we doing all that we're doing? It's because it will help us in the future to associate with the pure devotee, who will then free us from that association of sense gratification, that desire for sense gratification. The Agyata Sukriti is leading you to the association of pure and pure devotees that then do, because by association of the propensity of enjoyment. And that when I mean free from material desires, I don't mean that you're not experiencing that, oh, that's pizza, that's a beautiful girl, so many things. That's not what I'm saying. It means that I'm not cultivating, I'm not trying to fulfill. I have my mission, I'm doing my mission in my Guru service. And so you have to meet devotees who are in that state. And so all of the, Agyata Sukriti, or those activities which are done before that, are done so that we can get that association. That's the way the mercy works, according to Govardhana Maharaj.
Just one comment, great class. Just from what you said, Prabhupada was in Calcutta with some devotees, and they were watching, they went to actually a Gurpurnima festival. This was in the earlier days. And there was one lady that was dancing, and the devotees with Prabhupada were like looking around and thinking, oh, we should be looking at this. And then afterwards, Prabhupada said she had so much devotion that she did not excite any lust in any man because she was so devotional. So Prabhupada could, see that and perceive that, and the other devotees were just like confused what to do. But like you said, if you can see that but not react to it. Also, when Prabhupada was at the Detroit temple, when they were seeing it for the first time, because it wasn't like an art museum, so it had like ladies with not all the clothes on and stuff, and the devotees were like, really freaked out. They didn't know what to do. And then Prabhupada was making a comment how beautiful it was, because it was a very famous statue or something, and because he wasn't thinking of how to enjoy it, he was just appreciating the beauty that comes from Krishna.
Bewildered by it,
yeah,
moving from his missions. That's pure devotional service.
Yeah,
we can still even acknowledge the beauty. I think there's one. I've heard this from reputable sources, but I've not read it on the database. But there's one brahmachari was telling Prabhupada, "Oh, Prabhupada, I don't have any sex desire." And Prabhupada said, "Perhaps you should see a doctor." And but the idea is that once when actually there was one. Some Prabhupada memories. I forgot the devotee's name, but he was going to take sannyas, and he was being cultivated for sannyas. And he was going to talk to Prabhupada about it. And then Shamasundar was the GBC at that time, so Shamasundar stopped him and said, "What do you want, Prabhupada?" He said, "I want to talk to Prabhupada about sannyas." And then Shamasundar said, "You're not going to take sannyas. Like you ever think about women? You ever think girls are pretty?" He said, "Well, yeah. You ever think about sex?" "Yeah." I said, "You're not ready for sannyas." So then the next day he came back and he said, "Prabhupada, I think I'm going to get married." And Prabhupada said, "What happened to you? What happened to you?" And then he said, "Well, Shamasundar said this." And then Prabhupada fumed and he said, "How dare you tell my brahmacharis to get married?" He says, "Everybody thinks about sex in the material world. How dare you talk? What do you know?" He said, "How dare you talk to my brahmacharis that way?" So the idea is that, param drishta navartante, the higher taste is there. We have the higher taste. And we're fixed in consciousness, Krishna says, although the taste for such objects may remain, by refraining, one is fixed in consciousness, experiencing the higher taste. And so one of my really wonderful teachers in Bhakti Vaibhava, he said that pure devotee doesn't mean that there's no, material consciousness, or that there's no, objects of material beauty. It means that one doesn't pray to Krishna to fulfill them. One prays to Krishna to take them away and continuously engages in his devotional service. He doesn't try to fulfill them. And I'll just say that once I was hearing Kadamba Kanda Maharaj give a class, and he said, he's very charming, he said, it doesn't matter how high you are, one could be at the stage of Nishta, but you will know who the most beautiful woman in the room is within seconds of her walking in the room. So, you're like, when you're on the level of Shukadeva Goswami, you can be free of all that, or not. So we do have to rely on mercy, but still we continuously cultivate, purity.
Well, the verse in Bhagavad Gita that the rivers are entering into the ocean, but the ocean's always still. So Prabhupada also mentioned that not that material desires don't come, but a devotee does not act on them, and that's the difference.
He doesn't act on them, and that's like the that's the providential white flag to Maya. When you act on them, when you decide that now I have a plan to fulfill my desire, then you're in the danger zone. Thank you all very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Srila Prabhupada ki.